Without a second thought, she stormed toward the backyard, the only place she assumed Amaka would be. Reaching the backyard, she froze momentarily. The sight before her only fueled her anger. Heaps of unwashed clothes lay scattered, and the washed ones were still sitting in buckets. Her voice thundered. "Where is that idiot?" She screamed, her steps heavy as she stormed back into the sitting room through the kitchen door. Hearing her mother's outburst, Toyin looked up from the television. "What happened, Mummy?" she asked. "Where is that fool? Go to the backyard and see the mess she made. And worst of all, she didn't even make dinner." Auntie Bola spat, her voice filled with venom. "An, and I'm so hungry," Adesiwa frowned, crossing her arms with irritation. Mr. Kohler, already annoyed, stood up from the dining table and followed his wife to the source of the commotion. The tension in the air was palpable as the two of them stormed toward the packing store. Auntie Bola shoved the door open with a force that rattled it on its hinges. Inside, they found Amaka lying on the floor, curled into herself, trembling in her sleep. Her face was pale, her body still, but her hands twitched, as though even in sleep, she couldn't escape the torment that had become her life. For a brief moment, Auntie Bola's face betrayed surprise, but it was fleeting, quickly replaced by fury. "Look at her," she hissed, gripping the cane tighter. "Sleeping when there's work to do. Lazy and useless, just like her parents." Mr. Kohler said nothing, his face hardening as he took a step closer to the girl who had become little more than a punching bag in his household. Mr. Kohler's face darkened with anger as he took another step closer. Without hesitation, he swung his leg and kicked Amaka in the side. The force jolted her awake, and she let out a loud scream, her eyes flying open in terror. Her cry echoed through the house, loud enough to draw the children from the sitting room. One by one, they peeked into the packing store, their curiosity piqued by the commotion. Toyin was the first to speak, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Ah, so this is where you've been hiding instead of working." Adesiwa crossed her arms, her face contorted with irritation. "You didn't wash the clothes, you didn't cook dinner, and now you're just lying here, pretending to sleep. Unbelievable." Amaka struggled to sit up, her body aching from both the kick and the weight of everything she had endured. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't dare speak. She knew better than to try to defend herself. "You useless girl." Auntie Bola's voice was a sharp slap against the silence. She raised her cane and pointed it at Amaka. "Is this why we took you in? To sleep all day while my children starve? You're not only lazy but ungrateful too." Mr. Kohler stood over her, his expression cold and unrelenting. "Get up now and finish everything you left undone, or you'll see what I'll do to you." Amaka's trembling hands pressed against the floor as she tried to push herself up. Her body felt weak, her mind clouded with the weight of her pain and fear. The children stood in the doorway, watching her like an animal caught in a trap, their expressions a mix of scorn and smug satisfaction. Deep down, Amaka wished she could disappear, wished the ground beneath her would open up and swallow her whole. But all she could do was wipe her tears and prepare to face yet another day of torment in a house that seemed determined to break her spirit. As Amaka weakly made her way to the door, her legs trembling under the weight of her pain and exhaustion, Mr. Kohler's patience snapped. With a grunt of frustration, he showed her roughly from behind. "Move faster, you useless girl," he barked. The push was harder than it seemed, and it sent Amaka stumbling forward. Her frail body, weakened by years of maltreatment, and the trauma she had endured earlier that day, couldn't handle it. Before she could regain her balance, her legs gave out beneath her, and she collapsed onto the cold, hard floor. The room went silent for a moment as her body lay motionless, her breath shallow and ragged. Her arms hung limp by her sides, and her face bore the glazed, distant look of someone whose spirit was teetering on the edge. Auntie Bola stepped back in shock, the cane slipping slightly in her grip. "What is this now? Is she pretending?" she asked, her voice unsure for the first time. The children, now gathered in the hallway, exchanged glances. Toyin took a step forward, her usual smugness replaced with uncertainty. "Mummy, she's not moving." Mr. Kohler frowned, his anger momentarily replaced by unease. He crouched slightly, his voice sharp but quieter. "Amaka, get up!" But Amaka didn't move. Her body remained still, her chest barely rising and falling as the weight of the day consumed her. For the first time, a flicker of fear crossed Mr. Kohler's face. Auntie Bola's eyes darted between Amaka and her husband. "Aid, what if something's wrong with her?" The children's earlier disdain turned to nervous whispers, their eyes now fixed on the girl lying motionless on the floor. The reality of the situation was beginning to sink in, leaving a heavy tension in the air. "Get water quickly." Auntie Bola barked, her voice shaky with a mix of irritation and fear. Modupe, wide-eyed and visibly unsettled, dashed to the backyard to fetch a bucket of water. Within moments she was back, the bucket sloshing in her hands. Without hesitation, they emptied the cold water over Amaka's limp body. The water soaked her clothes and pooled on the floor, but Amaka didn't stir. Not a single flinch or gasp came from her. The stillness was haunting. "She's not moving," Modupe whispered, her voice trembling as she backed away slightly. Mr. Kohler knelt beside Amaka, his frustration giving way to something closer to panic. "This girl. What kind of problem is this?" he muttered under his breath. Without another word, he scooped her up in his arms, her small, frail body limp against his chest. "Tayo, get in the car," he barked as he rushed out of the house with Amaka. Tayo, startled but quick to obey, grabbed the car keys and followed closely behind. As the car sped off toward the hospital, Auntie Bola stood silently for a moment, gripping the cane in her hand. Her face was unreadable, her emotions locked behind years of practiced coldness. With a shake of her head, she turned back toward the kitchen. "Well, I can't let this ruin dinner," she muttered, her voice steady as if nothing had happened. She wiped her hands on her wrapper and began preparing a simple meal, humming softly to herself. The children, still standing in the hallway, exchanged glances. None of them spoke, but their unease was clear. The sight of Amaka being rushed to the hospital lingered in their minds, an image too heavy to shake. Yet, like their mother, they eventually turned away, retreating to their movie, leaving the soaked floor and empty buckets behind. For them, life continued as it always had. For Amaka, however, life hung in the balance. The car screeched to a halt in front of the small hospital. Mr. Kohler jumped out, carrying Amaka's limp body in his arms, while Tayo followed close behind. His face was a mixture of nervousness and impatience, his earlier smugness now replaced with guilt that he tried to mask. "Doctor, somebody help us." Mr. Kohler's voice boomed through the quiet reception area as he pushed through the glass doors. A nurse at the desk sprang to her feet, taking in the sight of Amaka's soaked, frail figure. She quickly called for a stretcher. Moments later, 2 attendants rushed in, and Mr. Kohler carefully laid Amaka onto the stretcher. "What happened to her?" the nurse asked, her voice calm but firm as she wheeled Amaka toward the emergency room. "She just collapsed at home. She's been overworked, maybe exhausted," Mr. Kohler stammered, avoiding the nurse's eyes. Tayo, standing slightly behind, fidgeted uncomfortably but said nothing. The nurse raised an eyebrow but said nothing as she motioned for them to stay behind. "We'll take it from here." "Please wait outside," she instructed before disappearing into the treatment area with Amaka. In the waiting room, Mr. Kohler paced back and forth, his hands clasped behind his back. Tayo sat on a plastic chair, his leg bouncing anxiously. The silence between them was thick, broken only by the occasional murmur of hospital staff. "What if something happens to her?" Tayo finally mumbled, his voice low. Mr. Kohler shot him a glare. "You better pray nothing does. You know how your mother will react if this turns into trouble." Tayo swallowed hard and nodded, looking away. His mind was spinning, the events of the day replaying in his head. After what felt like an eternity, the doctor emerged from the treatment room. His face was stern but calm as he approached them. "She's stable for now," he began, "but her condition is serious. She's severely malnourished and extremely dehydrated." And I noticed he paused, his eyes narrowing. "There are signs of physical and emotional trauma. Are you sure there's nothing else I should know?" Mr. Kohler stiffened, his hands tightening behind his back. "She's just a troublesome girl. Maybe she gets into fights at school or something. I don't know." The doctor's expression didn't change. Whatever the case, she needs proper care. "She'll have to stay here for a few days so we can monitor her condition and ensure she recovers. You should also consider speaking to a social worker about her well-being. This child has been through a lot." Mr. Kohler forced a smile. "Thank you, Doctor. We'll make sure she's fine." As the doctor walked away, Mr. Kohler turned to Tayo. "Don't say a word about this to anyone. Do you hear me?" Tayo nodded, his face pale. Meanwhile, in the sterile room where Amaka lay, her body felt heavy, but her mind was beginning to stir. The unfamiliar scent of antiseptic filled her nostrils, and the soft beeping of machines echoed around her. Slowly, she opened her eyes, blinking against the harsh fluorescent light. For the first time in years, Amaka felt a glimmer of something she hadn't known in a long time: hope. Though faint and fragile, it was there. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the beginning of a new chapter. As Auntie Bola and her children sat around the dining table, the aroma of the freshly made yam pottage filled the air. They laughed and chatted casually, completely unbothered by Amaka's absence or the events that had transpired earlier. Auntie Bola took a bite of the food and reached for her phone, dialing her husband's number. She tapped her fingers impatiently on the table as the call connected. "Hello, Aid," she said, her tone firm and businesslike. "How's that girl?" Join me next time for the part 2 of this story. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Hit that like button for more thrilling content, subscribe for new uploads, comment below with your theories and reactions. Share with friends and family who love a good story. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for being an amazing part of this journey.